I'm 46 years old, and I'm going through the police academy.
Wow.
And
you're with all these young cats, right?
I had the darkest hue, the most life experience, and I was the oldest guy while going through a divorce, and my dad was declining. Yeah, I don't recommend that mix of gumbo.
No. Well, hello everyone. Welcome back. It's time for another episode of the Ramos Law Difference Makers podcast. And today is going to be a super cool, super fun, educational episode for you. And so as your host, my job is to find people and to basically extract from them the information that makes them different and shows how they're making a difference in our world. And it is a pleasure for me to have someone who's involved in something that we can all learn from, only he's doing it at the highest levels in the most intense situations, life impacting situations, that once he shares his message and what the principles are that he teaches, I think you're going to be able to apply these and use them in your own life, no matter what level of conflict or problems that you may be going with. So I don't want to hold it a secret anymore. What we're going to do today is we're going to be talking about conflict, de-escalation, and resolution. And my guest today is Mr. Sean DeMarco Garcia. His story is amazing. How he got here is amazing. So hang on, hold tight, and once you see this, you're going to want to share this with your family and friends. So without any further delay, Sean, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. That was quite the intro.
Well, you deserve that.
I'm like, where's this dude at?
The dude's right here in front of me, and I'll tell you,
while
we're not friends before this, I get a sense of kinship with you, just
Absolutely.
from the handful of minutes that we've spent together, talking before the show and getting to know you, me studying up on what you're doing and the things that you're doing. And man, I really think it's important for our audience to understand what you're about as a human soul as we start into this, because you do is you take people in what could be deadly situations, meaning whether they're law enforcement with someone who's involved in being arrested or there's something going on. And if it doesn't get de-escalated, things could go real bad real fast. So
initial contact is extremely important. When I was in the academy, one of the things I took away from that, the police academy, one of the things I took away was just because they're on 10 doesn't mean you show up at 10. You show up at 3, and it's easier to bring them down than for you to show up at 8 or 9, and then you're both trying to come down.
Yes.
Because that's kind of counterproductive,
Yeah, it totally makes sense. So start us off with this. What is it that got you into conflict de-escalation? And maybe give a little bit of your background, because there's between military and law enforcement, there's some things that brought you here, and I think the audience would love to hear that story.
Absolutely. So I don't think my story is a unique one. It's just something I paid attention to, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is the direction I'm supposed to be going. So I've been a Boy Scout. I was a Boy Scout in high school.
Where'd you grow up?
In Detroit, Michigan.
Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah. Joining Navy, I was in the first Gulf War. Joined Navy at 17. I was a veteran, honorably discharged by the time I was 20. And then I had a host of different sales jobs. I tried almost everything because that's the type of person I am. Life is for living kind of thing. Hey, I'm gonna give this a shot, Eventually, in my mid-40s, I had the opportunity, I was given a very wonderful opportunity to become a police officer.
Was there a driving force that took you in that direction to say, now I want to try this?
No. Well, you really want to know the truth?
I do.
I was going through a divorce. The job I had at the time was not paying enough. And I was trying to figure things out. And above all else, my biggest thing was I was working for the police department at that point in a different capacity. And they were looking for officers, and I had this opportunity come up, and I was like, I'd be a fool not to take this. Because I always thought I was more of a firefighter type guy. I've repeatedly tried to join the fire department when I was in my 20s with Detroit, a couple of times, different, places around America. I even moved here thinking I was going to be a firefighter, and it's like, no, this was where I was supposed to be. So I was going through a divorce. I'm 46 years old, and I'm going through the police academy.
Wow.
And
you're with all these young cats, right?
I was
in their 20s.
I had the darkest hue, the most life experience, and I was the oldest guy while going through a divorce, and my dad was declining. Yeah, I don't recommend that mix of gumbo.
No.
And then there was other things too, personal things, you know. But it affected me, had a profound effect on me. And I felt so broken. But one of the shining lights in that was when I became a patrol officer, in light of things that were going on at that time within the law enforcement community, I was told I got hired because of who I am. And at my core, I'm not, I don't think I come off like a super tough guy. I'm just a nice dude. Got a heart of gold, and I like people. And people often would tell me, "You're a police officer?" And this is while I'm at work. They'd be like, "You too nice to be a police officer." And I'm like, what the hell? What the hell have people gone through as a whole to say that to somebody? Because generally, you want somebody, like if you see me as a police officer, you want to feel protected. You want to say, "Oh, Officer Garcia is here. I feel safe.
I'm safe."
Right. So it was a little, there were challenges that came with that, but it took some getting adjusted to. But while I was there, there's an array of classes to take, interview, interrogation, things like that. The thing that really struck me that I fell in love with was crisis intervention training. I was sent there to become a CIT officer certified so that it taught me as law enforcement how to recognize when someone is in emotional distress. You may have a homeless person that's flipping out. Bystanders don't know what they're looking at. All they see is this, in their heads, there's this troublesome monster.
Going crazy.
And that's the call we get. But when you show up on scene, you have to assess everything. And your demeanor and your emotional tone is what sets the tone moving forward. So I went through that class. It was a 40-hour class, and I liked it so much. The guy that got me into it, he said, "Hey, are you interested in being a coach?" Because I really dug it. I love role playing. I come from an entertainment background, so I've been in plays and stuff growing up and talent shows, things like that. And I was like, yeah, I can do this. So got into being a coach. Couple of years later, because I had to deal with life that was happening around me, I ended up losing my father, and then I wasn't a cop anymore and things like that. And life was just changing. Life is gonna life. That's what they say. Got back into it, and then I started working as an actor in role play scenarios. So I was able to do both, and I loved it so much. I was like, man, I can really do this, but I'd like to take it in a direction that hasn't been touched. So writing the book, it's not about you, and it's more about, it's more of a memoir of memories, lessons, and techniques. Because the deeper I got into crisis intervention training, and this was after I became a certified coordinator, CIT coordinator, so now I could put on my own courses and things like that. But the book was calling me. So I didn't want to do a how-to book on crisis intervention techniques. I wanted to share stories. I wanted to share some of myself and say, hey, you're not the only one that went through this in your life. I went through this. I'm dealing with this. I think the biggest thing is somewhere along the way, humanity forgot to be human. This isn't a political thing. It's not a religious thing. It's not an ethnic thing. This is a human thing. There's only two guarantees in life. We're all born and we're all gonna die. I choose to spend my time here bringing people together because that human experience is what we all have in common.
Right, and the way that you're uniquely posed and gifted to bring people together is people that don't feel like they're coming together. They feel like they're coming at each other.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, we tend to focus on our differences.
Yeah.
And I'm a science guy too. I love science. So we tend to forget that we have way more in common than we don't. So true. But when you focus, when you speak negatively, when you focus on the negative, that's kind of what you tend to get. I had to learn to be a realist because I've always been a glass half full kind of a guy, but never half empty, But during all of that stuff I went through, I battled my own depression. I battled my own anxiety. I have my own things going on being on the spectrum. And you can either choose to confront it and deal with it and make things better for you and everybody else, or you can say, hey, it's not me, it's you.
Yeah. And so you find this passion, you gain these skills, and you refine them to where you get to the point where you say, okay, I'm going to put together a program that's going to allow me to help people at very high end, very high stakes situations come into something. And as you say, instead of coming in at a level 10 to match this person's energy that's at a level 10, you're going to show them how to come in at a level 3, even though they know they may be going into anxiety, into call it a sort of almost war zone of sort, or potential war zone. They still have to come in level headed. Did you develop this through all these other kind of trainings that you took through the military and through your academy training? Or
well, when I look back on it, I got here because I didn't get it all right. I got here because I screwed up a lot. You know, I grew up in a household where my dad had a very strong personality. And, you know, it's the 70s. This is, you know, in Detroit, Michigan. And he was a musician. And it was his house. And I didn't realize, like, as a kid, I felt like I didn't really have a voice to a certain degree. And I didn't realize it till I almost got married, or when I got married. And that was, like, later in life. But you tend to look at your upbringing and the environment that you're in and say, well, wait a minute. Just because this was my upbringing doesn't mean it has to stay this way. You know, our parents, people always want to kind of attack the parents and say, well, you didn't do this for me, you didn't do that. And we tend to forget that even when we become parents, we do the best we can with what we know at the time. It's not always right, but if you're there and you're in the fight, that counts for something. So I don't carry I don't carry any animosity toward my dad or my mom. They love me very much. My mom's still alive. And they did the best they could with what they had. And I don't think I turned out too bad, me nor my brother.
Did you learn a lot from having siblings and in your relationship that you carried through into what you're doing now with this de-escalation training? Or was it more at higher level? No.
I think it starts at the very basic foundation. When there's a disagreement, and I learned this from somebody in the past, in an argument, the first one to raise their voice usually loses. Because it's about emotion. Really, listen. That's one of the 3 things that I push. Listen, validate emotions, have empathy. Validating emotion is often confused with, I agree with you. They're 2 completely different things.
So give an example of validating an emotion so that it's not just an agreement statement. What would that look like practically for someone listening?
Validating emotions is basically saying, hey, I understand this happened to you. You have every right to be upset.
To feel the way you feel.
You have because we're human. You're allowed to be human. That doesn't mean I agree with what you say you're going to do. It doesn't mean, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there's a difference, because remember, people tend to focus on the differences instead of just being human. There's nothing wrong with being human. We all cry, we all laugh. We all fall in love. We all get dumped. We all, we're all fighting the same battle. We're just in different costumes doing it.
Yeah.
But the way most people carry themselves, we look at other people and say, oh, there's nothing wrong with them. Their lives are all figured out. And the older you get, the more you find out. That's not true.
Right.
You know?
You know, something interesting. I'm reading a book right now called Breakfast with Seneca. Now, Seneca was one of the Stoics, one of the great Stoics in ancient times. And the Stoic philosophy I'm not familiar with, and that's why I wanted to just get an intro to it with this book, right? And so I'm looking at that, and according to Seneca, the greatest of negative emotions. And so the Stoics, their big thing is don't get tied into negative emotions, get tied into logic and reason. And I can see how a lot of that would come into play in this negotiation, and not even negotiation, but in this working through and de-escalation process. And what he says is you don't get angry unless and until you feel that someone or something has wronged you. That's when you get angry versus fearful. But anger can be a strain of fear, right? If you cope with fear through anger, because you're hoping you can get the thing that you're afraid of to back down by being angry. So then his big thing is, before you respond, take a minute and look at it from a broader perspective.
Look at the apple from the other side.
Yes, look at the apple from the other side.
Right.
And then go, okay, now what's my logical response onto why this person is feeling this way? And why am I starting to get angry? That if you can create that time buffer, that gives you all the advantage to avoid that anger. And I think if what I think I'm understanding about what you do is the key is everyone's hyped up. Now, if there's drugs involved or anything else, that's a physiological and
whole different mental
chemical
state.
deal. That's a whole different deal than just
Right.
being angry because you had a fight with your neighbor or your spouse or whatever. But tell me the importance of or what's some of the tools to keep that anger level low and bringing the anger down on the other side.
The main thing is you have to remember it's not about you, especially if you're a frontline worker.
Like a police officer, or those are primary frontline workers? Who would you define as
healthcare,
Healthcare?
teachers.
Yep.
Anyone who deals directly with the public and touches on the public facet of just community and serving, right?
Yep.
It's not about you. But if you're overworked, you feel like you're underpaid, you have issues at home, you're not doing self-care, and that's another thing we can talk about. If you're not taking care of yourself, but you're in a position where other people depend on you as a frontline worker, it can go bad really fast. And then you'll start to resent the people you signed up to do this for, because I've seen it.
Yes.
I've been a part of it. Me, like, you can call me whatever you want. I've been called everything in the book, like when I was a police officer. And even in my current day capacity, get called any and every, and that doesn't bother me because they don't know me. Nobody, they don't know me. Mm-hmm. But there are trigger words. Everybody has their limit. And I always emphasize, if you need to get out of there, tag out, go back in, and let somebody else. You got to know when to say, okay, this isn't about me, but you dropped the N-bomb like 48 times. I'm about to snap. Hey, can we switch? Yeah. And that's okay, because it's okay to be human.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's okay. So you need a team, though.
I hear you saying that you best not go into some of these situations
if you don't have
to.
If you don't have to, if you have someone by your side in any capacity, a lot of this too. But here's the thing. Look at this too. So I kind of regulated this to interpersonal relationships. How many married couples or people together have we seen have shouting matches because they were hurt, they wanted to be right, and nobody feels heard? And that happens a lot. This totally applies to that. Siblings who don't get along. And I just think the sooner we educate people under us and they realize, well, wait a minute. Some people may see this and say, oh no, Sean's living a dream world. That would never happen. And then some people may say, you know what? I'm going to try one or two of those things. I'm going to maintain my patience and I'm going to let them finish speaking. I don't have to agree with it. So what you're saying is.
Do you like that part? Repeat. Like what I heard you say is that a big part of the program in hearing someone out is not just hearing and then responding, but before you give your thought, you say, now, let me make sure I got this right. Correct. What you're saying is, and then repeat it.
Correct. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Got it. Yeah.
And your tone, your center, like one of the things I'm really big on in recent years is maintaining my center. I try not to let anybody knock me off my center.
How do you do that? What's the tools that you use to stay centered?
Controlling stress.
Through exercise or meditation? Or
whatever you need to do is different for everybody. I always insist that everybody has 15 minutes a day where they don't have to share with nobody else and you do something. 15 and 30 minutes a day. Reading a book, meditation, whatever you want to do. For me, like I'm a really good cook, and that's one of my love languages. But when I cook, I feel so much better because I know I can give away the food. The boys eat it, my two boys, all of that stuff. So you have to find what your solace is, and it's different for everyone.
And do you work more when you're teaching these things? I know one of your big tools to help people, according to what I was researching, is role play. And I'm a huge fan of role play in helping any position, whether it was in my chiropractic companies or whether it's here at the law firm and what I do. I love to role play because it puts people in a similar position but under pressure that's different than the pressure of real life when they don't really know anybody, and so they can be more confident. When someone's role playing with someone they know, they don't want to mess it up, they don't want to look dumb. It's big, but does it matter? Are the lessons of role playing different when it comes to a brother, sister, a couple, than an officer or a frontline worker? The ER person comes in, the ER team, whether it's a doctor or whether it's a admin person, has someone in their worst moment. This person's pissed off because they're angry. How does that work?
It can be different.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be. So one thing that I was taught by the guy that got me into this, you never compromise your safety with anybody. You might be trying to validate emotion. They pop you right in your jaw or something.
Yeah.
Distance, that makes it, but how they receive you is a big deal. Sometimes people they just feel unheard, and they build up and they lash out. So when doing a CIT, 40-hour CIT course, right?
Can you define the term CIT?
Crisis Intervention Training course. Yep. It's a 40-hour course to get certified as a CIT professional or CIT officer. Mm-hmm. The second half of the week goes into the role play, and we hire actors and their scenarios. You put them through pertinent to the industry that you're working in at that point. And these actors are fantastic. They're really, really good. And then we put the officer in there. They're not allowed to. There are no weapons allowed in the scene. There's no. They can't do anything but talk, and you have to talk to this person because it's a talking exercise. Now, there's been debate on whether talking is a tactical or not, and it's been received both ways. But at the end of the day, it's a talking exercise, and you have to talk to the actor. And if the actor doesn't feel like you're getting it while they're in character, they're going to push you. I've had a lot of people, for some reason, with me, break down. The walls come down. Because you're one of
the actors.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm the coach, but they've always cried with me, like big guys, guys that are very tactical and hunting, fishing. They say, "Oh man, I just touched me. I lost my uncle last week," or whatever. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it just reconfirmed to me that we're all human, we're all spiritual beings having a human experience.
I love that line.
And it's the truth. Social media have you screwed up, man. You think that everybody on there has this perfect life, and I'm not one of those guys. I'm not very stoic at all, man. I think every girlfriend I've ever had, I got and cried in front of.
And notice stoicism as a philosophy, they make a big deal to say when we think of stoic, we define the term as emotionless, but rather the Stoics were very emotional. They were very passionate. They just didn't want to give way to what they called negative emotion. So I'm learning that a lot.
Or like the poker face thing. Like,
yes.
Okay, you got to me, but I'm not going to let you know you got to me.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stoicism came from our grandfathers, their fathers, because back then, men weren't allowed to show emotions.
Yes.
Especially men of color like me, It was easier just to drink it away or whatever, and you can't, we know you can't do that. You can, but it won't get you very far.
No, it won't get you anywhere.
It's okay to let it out. Mm-hmm. Talk to somebody. Let it out. If you need a minute by yourself, that's fine too. Yeah. It's okay to be human, and that's the heart of my message. I'm very much. I said this somewhere else, but I'm very much. We are the world. It's something I believe in. We're all tied. We're all connected. But it's okay to be human. It's okay to care about people. It doesn't make you any less of a man or woman. Doesn't mean you're better than everybody else, because at the end of the day, we're all going to die anyway.
Amen to that.
I hope they don't use that as a quote. Be like, hey, he said this.
Yeah, but it's true.
Yeah.
Do you have a top 3 steps for de-escalation at any level? What would those be?
And listening.
Okay.
Emotional validation and empathy.
Oh yeah, you mentioned those before. So define those in a way that would be practically taken by someone who's in a relationship that they see tension in. It might be a working relationship with a colleague. Like, what does listening mean? Was that the empathetic ear that we were talking about earlier?
Right.
Like, hey man, I hear you. I get what you're saying.
Exactly, it all ties in. Empathy just means you're not a piece of crap, a moral piece of crap. It just means you care about people. Some people would say that's a sign of weakness. Nah, man. I think empathy comes from love, and love is the most powerful thing. And a lot of people won't say that because they think love is soft and weak. No, love is powerful. How many grown men seen get broken down by love, whether they lost it or acquired it? Love is powerful, man. So I stand by that. That's my religion.
Do you try to show love in a de-escalation situation? Do you try to through empathy?
I think the fact that when you validate emotions on a human level, you don't know this person personally, and they don't know you, but on a human level, who wants to see somebody else suffer?
Yep.
You got to be, like I said, you have to be a morally bankrupt individual to take pride in seeing someone else suffer. Even if you don't have money to give them, you can't give them a job, you don't have these material things, validating their emotions and just saying, man, that's really tough, dude. I'm so sorry you're going through that. What can I do? That makes a huge difference to people, you know? Mm-hmm. That's not weak, that's strong, man. You know?
When you can't help them with their problem as a direct thing. Again, now I'm moving it up the scale. So we've been talking about some relationships. Now let's go to high stakes, because I know you work with a lot of agencies, law enforcement agencies, that kind of thing. When someone comes into a situation where, like I just heard on the news recently that there was a young man and he might have been from Chicago or something, but he killed 8 people in a couple of different locations. And then he takes off and they find this kid, 23 years old, they find him in Texas, right? And so now they find him in here. He, fled from wherever he was. Mm-hmm. And when they surround him and they're talking to him, eventually his way out is taking his own life. So when you get at that level, how do you show, when you can't give them what they want, which is, hey, let's forget all this, pretend it all goes just away, and let's go on about, and I'll be good from here on out. That's not an option, right?
No,
not in a case like that.
No.
So how do you show this person the love that you're talking about, and at the same time help them understand, bro, you put yourself in this situation, we're going to have to answer for it, but I'm here to help you as best I can. That's got to be challenging.
So the same way, and this may not be a really good example, but this is what popped in my head. Remember the kid that killed all those people in the church?
Yes.
And they arrested him, they took him to Burger King. The same way that they showed that kind of compassion for that individual, you can show for somebody else. I'm not saying everybody gets to go to Burger King, but.
Because that person had mental challenges at some level. You don't do that if you're all
you don't kill anybody
centered and
without,
right? Like,
you know?
So this person needs to be handled with that understanding.
We tend to take it personally too. Like, it's really hard to not get angry at somebody who kills children,
yes,
or our elderly, neither of which we take care of very well. If you really look at our society, we don't take care of our elderly the way we should. And what we're setting up for our children, for the most part, we could do a better job. There's all this division. Like I said, we're all born, we're going to be young, we're all going to go and be elderly. I just look at things a little different. Mm-hmm. I look at other cultures, how they treat their children, their elderly.
Do you introduce that into your programs? Other cultural, the way other cultures treat each other, is that part of what you've developed into what you do?
I have. And I'm not saying, I remember one time I was in a situation and somebody yelled out, yeah, well, but we're in America. We're not there. And I said, let me finish, because you're listening to reply, not to understand. There's a difference, which goes back to one of the 3, which is listening. Mm-hmm. People are so in a hurry to be right and deep in those valleys of differences that it's almost like we're afraid to learn something. Communication's a big thing, man. There's a lot of stuff I don't agree with, but I'm not willing to give up my center to argue with somebody over something they're not going to change their mind over anyway.
Right. Have you ever thought about applying these principles? And I mean, these are common sense. Nothing that you're saying to anyone watching or listening is going, I've never thought about that or heard that, but it's the way that you're applying it. Have you ever thought about how this could work in politics? It didn't hit me as we were talking about conflict de-escalation, but holy crap, is there conflict in politics right now?
It's a dirty thing, man. Like, I always have this joke that I say to certain people who really, really know me. I said, man, I've been a Boy Scout, I'm a Navy veteran, I've been a patrol officer. The only thing I haven't done is run for Senate. But would I do it now? Absolutely not, dude. It is horrendous out there. I mean, and then with all these little cancel cultures, like, hey, you knocked my soda over in 3rd grade, you're a horrible human being. And then that snowballs into we've all made mistakes. Hopefully we've evolved from them. But I don't know if that's something I would want to put my children through.
Yeah.
I like this.
Yeah. And can you use this, though? I think where I'm going with it is these particular principles could apply in anything. And I could see how they could be really effective in the political arena between parties who see things from the opposite perspective. Nothing drives me crazier. I'm the most anti-political human there might be, from the fact of, if you're not going to listen to the other side, if you say, I vote this way because I'm a blank, no matter what I think, I have to think this way because I'm a blank. Fill in your party here, right?
Right.
I think what we're talking about is listening, having empathy, understanding, looking for mutual common ground. All those things could and shouldn't. We've said this forever about everything, but man, what you're espousing here, de-escalation, it just hit me that there's a lot of de-escalation that needs to happen in our political system.
Absolutely. We're so worried about, it's a mess, man. I don't like talking about politics. You know, one of the things that I learned as I got older, because a lot of people think I'm one particular party or another particular party, and like I said, I'm not here to talk about that, but I will tell you this. There's not one grown person in their sound mind who isn't all of one or the other.
Right.
There are things we're X on, there are things we're Y on, but nobody's all X, nobody's all Y. And when you vote, and this is why we vote, and I tell everyone to vote, especially my community, Black and brown community, you vote to get your voice heard. Nothing really pisses me off more than people say, well, voting doesn't matter. Oh, it does, you know. And I look at people like that as, okay, they've given up hope. They've let social media memes educate them. Like, when's the last time somebody actually read a book? And I grew up reading books. I'm a English minor. I'm a writer. I've always been a writer. I mean, hell, I had a typewriter in 6th grade, dude. Yeah, that's a whole different podcast. But you got to read different sources and different things, and you got to come to, instead of just saying, well, you can't just say, well, that's not true because you disagree with it. That's not how life works. It's kind of like science. Science is true whether you believe it or not.
Yeah. And it's always evolving, right? That's the funny thing about science. And
it's about what we believe at that moment. That doesn't mean it can't change in the future.
Right. With our best knowledge as we have
at
it
that
now.
moment, yes.
And I think that applies to what we were talking about. Sorry to diverge you from that into the political scene a little bit, but it just fascinates me.
Yeah.
But kind of coming back around, we all do, and I love this. I first learned this from a guy named Deepak Chopra, who's you know
Deepak,
who Deepak is. So when you said your statement about, we're doing the best we can, I remember Deepak in one of the books I read of his talking about we're all doing the best we can with the tools we have in the moment we're in.
Exactly.
And so that's where I think what you're doing in preparing people, and I want to talk about that next, is how you go about doing this. But if I'm prepared, like when you look at an athlete that's going into competition, they don't go into competition unprepared. And if they do, they lose, right? You look at an army, if they go into battle unprepared, they lose.
Right, correct.
And so what you're trying to get accomplished, from what I can tell through your company, is to get people educated, trained up, and ready before the crisis happens, so that you can be effective in de-escalating at whatever level.
Almost like a crisis awareness.
Crisis awareness. There you go.
Yeah, because it applies in interpersonal relationships, professional relationships. I mean, emotions have gotten the best of everyone. Deals have been made, lost, love has been made and broken. I mean, but I just think if we all just slow down a little bit, and this applies to me, I'm still figuring it out. Like, I'm 53 with a 15 and a 12-year-old. And I get taken out of pocket sometime, man. I'm like, look, But most of the time I try to say, okay, hey, you made a mistake. Let's move forward. Give yourself some grace. And I've gotten really big on that because I beat myself up for the last 6 years over things. After some of the things I went through, somebody decides they don't want to be with you. It may not be about you. Maybe it's them. Mm-hmm. And I spent how many years saying, man, what could I have done different? Maybe I couldn't have done anything different. Maybe those people, it wasn't about me.
Yeah.
Love
that. Let's talk about your company, Astrochemical Consulting. First of all,
Astrochemistry
Consulting.
There's a story behind it.
And I want to hear that. And I know what the story is, but I want our Difference Makers family to hear it, because
Absolutely.
It's interesting when you think about astrochemistry, you're like, okay, this must be a chemical company or something, but no, it's actually, what you do. I want you to describe what your company does, but first give the story behind the name. It's so cool.
So astrochemistry was the name of my dad, my dad was a Detroit musician, and I grew up in his lifestyle. Went to all his rehearsals. He put out one record, and he had a production company. It was called Astrochemistry Productions, and I have the record, and it's online and things like that on YouTube. But I always loved the logo, and I always loved the name. And when he passed away, I was in, you're trying to figure it out when you lose a parent, and I was like, you know what? Astrochemistry Consulting. That was like a really good way I felt I can honor him without, not just having his last name and face.
Yes.
Because everybody say we look just alike. So yeah, it's that's where that comes from. He's always been into like the sciences and the arts, and like I give you the perfect example. This sums up my childhood. My favorite show of all time is The Twilight Zone. I have the box Blu-ray set.
The original.
I have all the radio episodes. I have all of that. I have the 2 episodes they would never show on television. All of that stuff, right? So, because I used to come home from kindergarten and he'd be rehearsing in the basement. My mom be at work, and I would eat a sandwich and watch The Twilight Zone, and it just became part of my DNA. You know what I mean? So that kind of gives you a little bit of insight into my upbringing. Like I remember being like 2 or 3 years old, and we would take the bus to the bar that he had a gig at, and I would be on his shoulder, and in his other arm, he would have his bass and amp. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah. So wow. Yeah. So I mean, we didn't have a lot of money, but I had my mom and dad were there, and that matters. Yeah. So now my mom is out here with me, and I make sure she gets whatever she wants.
That's so cool. So you have this family heritage business or name.
Mm-hmm.
So explain to our audience what the business does specifically. So we've talked about de-escalation. Okay. We know that's what it does.
Right.
How does it do it? Who does it do it for?
So primarily, I wanted to focus, the guy that got me into it, he focused on law enforcement, and I got into it through him. And then we started talking about other avenues that could benefit from this. Fire departments, healthcare professionals, particularly nurses and doctors in the ED. They put up with a lot of stuff too. Academia, teachers, because how many teachers have we seen attacked, or how many teachers have we seen? It only takes, kids will push you, anybody who is a parent, and they just snap and they say, you're like, oh, so I just think more can be done if awareness is there.
And that's what you guys focus on, is the awareness piece.
Right, I do. I kind of took it in a different direction than the guy that got me into it.
Mm-hmm.
He focuses primarily on law enforcement, and I've been throughout the state with him and learned a lot, saw a lot. He does a great job. But finding my niche kind of came after that. And I was like, wait a minute, I can do this. And because he and I come from different demographics, I think I'm needed right now. Not like a savior, but like just to bring awareness.
Yeah.
I'm no better or worse than anybody else,
And how do you do that? Is it through a series of, you talked about the role playing that you do. Would you go into a classroom, for example, with students and teachers, or is it a group of teachers and then you say, okay, we're going to role play some scenarios, and you have 5 different scenarios and you role play them out? Like, what's the process of your education?
So typically in a 40-hour class, first 2 days is all classroom time. You'll get presenters and people talking about, I have a friend, she has a book, talking about her experiences with her brother who she lost. Great speaker. She's a coach also. And you get other people, other coaches. And when you meet with the client, it's not like a cookie cutter kind of thing. Everybody has different needs. So you have to do this exploratory meeting and say,
so
okay,
a needs assessment, basically.
Basically, yes. And you have to say, let me see what we can do for you. So then you tailor the scenario role playing around that with the actors. And it's exhausting. As an actor, it's exhausting. As a coach, it's exhausting. And if you're in law enforcement and you're in that class and you don't have your duty belt, your weapons are out, and you're going to depths of emotions that you haven't touched on in years, it can it can hurt. It can hurt, but it's a good hurt. It's a good thing to feel that, because you need to feel and say, oh, wait a minute. I felt this while I was in this exercise, and now I'm dealing with this on the street. Hey, Bob, what's going on? Oh, Bob, you're schizophrenic. Hold on, and let me help him. You know, because it's like I always say, everything's not about a summons or a ticket. There's people that really, really need help, and with the state cutting resources for mental health needs drastically in the last 7 years, we're seeing more people on the street, and you tend to look at it differently after you've been a patrol officer. It's not like, oh, get out of my face, you're homeless. No, it's like you learn a lot about that community and you come to respect it. Just like a certain percentage of that community chooses to be homeless because they went through something incredibly traumatic, lost a partner or something, and they just don't want to go back to mainstream. How do you deal with that?
Right.
And are they wrong for thinking like that? Because you can't tell them how to deal with something you've never been through. But you can be human and be like, man, hey, I was thinking about you, here's some pants. You know, the smallest thing. There's so much we can do, and it doesn't have to be about money.
Yeah.
Emotional validation. People feel invisible. So it's a journey, but it could be a really beautiful journey if you just allow yourself to be human. Does that make sense?
It completely does. And I'll tell you, Sean, you are such a shining example of just, you project humanity, love, you project this sense of connection, and that's the goal. And I think any business or enterprise that puts that as the focus is going to make a connection with the people that it's meant to connect with. And so I want to thank you for coming today. I want to thank you for sharing your story. I would like for you, if you wouldn't mind, to share who should contact you. Like if someone's watching this and they're like, man, I'm into what that guy's saying, and I could use some de-escalation training, but I don't know if he would work with me. What's the kind of person, group, organization, or whatever that you'd work with, and how do they get in touch with you? Anyone
who's willing to learn, anyone who's coachable. One of the big areas that I really saw that could benefit from my services are adult care services, dealing with disabled adults.
So seniors.
And seniors.
And seniors? Okay.
Yeah. Takes a lot of patience. I mean, my mom was a caregiver for my dad for the last 20 years of his life. But you get pushed to the depths, and sometimes, if it's not checked, the caregiver will go before the person they're caring for. Anybody's welcome to call me. My number is 303-618-9331. You can text me. I try to text everybody back. Just don't try to sell me Microsoft or nothing. I already got that. But yeah, I'm willing to talk to anybody about it because it's something I really, really believe in. And honestly, I feel I've become a better man because of this, being vulnerable.
Yes.
You know?
Oh, so good. I have one more question for you, Sean.
Whatever you want,
as
man.
We go. You've obviously gone through a lot, seen a lot, done a lot, and are accomplishing a lot in your life and making a difference. Is there one piece of advice that you've come up along the way, or that someone gave you, that is now integral to this man that you've become and the mission that you're on, that you would be willing to share with us?
Yeah. Be your genuine self. Everybody else is taken. Sometimes we learn that early, and those are the people that know what they want to do coming out the womb in life. I wasn't one of those people. I've always been somebody that's had everything's interest me, being on the spectrum, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna be a superhero this week, then I'm gonna be a doctor next week. But be your genuine self, and don't let anybody make you feel bad for being genuine. It's okay to have different interests. It's okay to change careers. Give yourself some grace, and we never do that as humans.
That's brilliant. Well, man, I've enjoyed our time.
Thank you, man.
I hope this has been something that our audience can grab onto and learn from. I'm sure that they will. And for those of you that are out there making a difference, please take this information to heart. Do something with it. Be more human, be more authentic, and be more caring. And if you like this, please share it with someone, send it to someone. Reach out to Sean. Let him know how he can help you. And if you have other thoughts of episodes that you'd like to hear, different kinds of guests, different topics, please let me know. You can reach out to me, jim@ramoslaw.com, and I'll be happy to do that as well. So thank you guys again for watching, for listening. And Sean, thank you for being here, man. Great pleasure.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it,
I look
brother.
forward to the next time we get to do this.
Yeah, call me. I'm here.
All right, my friend. All right, be blessed.
Thank you.